This is a quick, easy guide for making and canning pickles. For supplies, you're going to want a large canning pot. This is a 12-quart pot, and you're going to need some sort of rack to put at the bottom so your jars don't bang around while they're being boiled. You're going to need some measuring cups and measuring spoons, as well as a wide mouth funnel and this trusty little jar lifter. I will be using quart-sized jars for this, and these are pint-sized jars, and the difference really is just the water bath time and your preference. For ingredients, I will be using 5% vinegar, some granulated sugar, some salt, which I will talk a bit more about in a minute, some garlic and some fresh dill springs, some pickling spice, and of course cucumbers. I will link the recipe for this homemade pickling spice in the description. Now let's talk about salt. You don't want to use table salt. Kosher salt can be okay, but you have to check that it's actually for pickling, because a lot of salts will contain this anti-caking agent, and that's going to make your brine very cloudy and it might sacrifice the quality. I'm going to start by filling my 12-quart pot full of water almost to the top, but not quite. I want to make sure that I have enough water that when I put my jars in, it's going to cover the jars over the top. I'm going to put it on the stove, and I actually turn it to about 8, not quite on high, enough to get it to boil, and then I cover it with a lid. In a separate saucepan, I'm going to start the brine. I'm going to have it on very low because I don't want it to burn. So I'm going to start with 6 cups of the vinegar, 3 cups of filtered water, 3/4 cups of sugar, and 6 tablespoons of the salt. I'm going to give it a stir so it doesn't stick to the bottom. I don't want this to burn or boil. I'm going to start to peel my garlic. I leave them whole and I add about 4 cloves to a jar, and then I cut my cucumbers into skewers because that's just my preference. I'm going to add a couple sprigs of fresh dill, and then I'm going to start to arrange them into my jar. I like to put some of the dill seed flowers around the edges because it looks really pretty. I like to add a heaping tablespoon of the pickling spice plus a little bit more for flavor, and then take a moment to admire my pickle art. When my jars have been filled and arranged, then I bring my brine over and I ladle it in using the wide mouth funnel, and I fill it all the way to the top, leaving 1-inch headroom. So you can see that I didn't fill it all the way to the top. Then I like to take a chopstick and just poke around and try to get all the air bubbles out. Then I take a paper towel with some vinegar on it and I wipe the edges of the jar down, and then I also wipe down the lids and the rings. Even though these have been pre-sanitized by washing them with warm soapy water and rinsing them, I even put them in the oven at 175 degrees for 10 minutes to also sterilize them. This is just an extra precaution I like to take. And then I seal off the jars finger tight, meaning one snug twist. Then I check that my water is boiling, and I use my lifter, and I put the jars into the boiling water, making sure that the water is covering the top and that they aren't touching or banging against each other. Then I cover it with a lid and I set the timer for 15 minutes for quart-sized jars. Once they are finished, I remove the lid and I use the lifters to lift the jar out of the boiling water, and then I place them on the counter for them to cool off, and you should hear the lids snap shut with a little pop. That's how you know that they are done and they are sealed correctly. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more homesteading content.